The day I inherited Bella Vista Vineyard was the day my family showed their true colors. Not that I was surprised. The Rosses had always been more interested in wine profits than winemaking. But watching them sieve as Aunt Marie's will was read, I realized just how little they understood about her legacy. My name is Isabella Romano, and my aunt had just left me what my family called 40 acres of worthless grapes. What they didn't know was that those grapes were about to reveal a secret that would shake the wine world to its core. "This is ridiculous," Uncle Marco fumed, pacing the law office in his Italian leather shoes. Marie was clearly not in her right mind. The vineyard should go to someone who understands the business. By someone, he meant his son Anthony, who had spent the last decade trying to convince Aunt Marie to sell Bella Vista to a major wine conglomerate. She'd refused every offer, watching quietly as the vineyard's reputation declined, and its wines became, in critics' words, unremarkable. "The will is quite clear, Mr. Patterson," Marie's longtime attorney stated firmly. "Bella Vista Vineyard, including all property, equipment, and assets, goes to Isabella Romano. There are no conditions or restrictions. She's a librarian." My cousin Sophia scoffed, adjusting her designer sunglasses. What does she know about wine? More than they realized. While they saw me as the quiet bookworm who chose an academia over the family business, they'd forgotten who had spent every summer at Bella Vista since childhood, who had learned every aspect of winemaking at Aunt Marie's side, who had inherited her sensitive palate and love for the art of wine. Mary spent 20 years running that vineyard into the ground. Uncle Marco continued. "The soil's depleted, the vines are old, the wine is mediocre. Take our offer, Isabella. We'll give you fair market value, and you can go back to your books." I thought about the last conversation I'd had with Aunt Marie just a week before she passed. She'd been sitting in her study at Bella Vista, surrounded by old wine journals and vintage bottles. "Patience, my dear," she'd said, her eyes twinkling with that familiar mischief. "The truth, like the finest wine, reveals itself to those who know how to wait." "I'm keeping the vineyard," I said firmly, gathering the deed and other documents from Mr. Patterson. "You're making a mistake," Anthony warned. "That place hasn't produced anything worth drinking in 20 years. If only they knew." The drive to Bella Vista took 40 minutes, winding through the Sonoma Valley. The late afternoon sun gilded the rows of grapevines that generations of my family had tended. To untrained eyes, they might look neglected, even sickly, but I saw what Aunt Marie had taught me to see: vines that had been carefully stressed, forced to drive their roots deep into the mineral-rich soil. The main house was a rambling Spanish colonial, its white walls glowing in a sunset. This had been my sanctuary during childhood summers, escaping my parents' constant social climbing in San Francisco. Here, Aunt Marie had taught me that winemaking wasn't about profit margins. It was about patience, tradition, and secrets passed down through generations. Inside, everything was exactly as she left it. The kitchen still smelled of herbs and coffee. Her collection of vintage corkscrews hung on the wall. Her wine journals filled the study shelves, each volume meticulously documenting decades of harvests, fermentations, and blends. But something was different. On her desk, in the spot where she always laid out her daily work, sat a single key with a note in her elegant handwriting. "For Isabella, when you're ready to know the truth." I recognized the key's distinctive design. It was older than the others on her ring, its brass worn smooth by time. But I'd never seen her use it. A knock at the door interrupted my thoughts. Marcus Torres, Bella Vista's vineyard manager for the past 30 years, stood on the porch with a sympathetic smile. "Thought you might need some help getting settled," he said. "I heard about the will reading." Marcus had been Aunt Marie's right hand, the only person she trusted completely with the vineyard's operations. He taught me about soil composition and root systems, while other kids my age were learning to ride bikes. "They think it's worthless," I told him, letting him in. "They can't understand why she'd leave it to me." Marcus's eyes twinkled, reminding me of Aunt Marie. "Your aunt was many things, but foolish wasn't one of them. Have you found it yet?" "Found what?" He nodded at the key in my hand. "That's not just any key. It opens something special. Something Marie said you'd know what to do with when the time came." I studied the key more carefully. Its head was decorated with a grapevine pattern, the teeth showing signs of age but still sharp. "The wine cellar?" I asked. "But I've been down there hundreds of times." Marcus shook his head. "Not that cellar." For the next hour, we searched the house methodically. every room, every closet, looking for a lock that might match this mysterious key. Finally, in the study, I noticed something odd about the vintage wine map hanging behind Aunt Marie's desk. Moving it aside revealed a small door set into the wall, its lock green with age. The key fit perfectly. Beyond the door, a narrow staircase descended into darkness. The beam of our flashlights revealed stone walls lined with wine racks, the air cool and perfectly still. But these weren't ordinary wines. My God, Marcus breathed, examining the nearest bottle. Do you know what this is? I lifted my flashlight, reading the label. My hands started shaking. Chateau Lafite Rothschild, 1869. One of the rarest, most valuable wines in existence. And it wasn't alone. The cellar held hundreds of bottles, each one a legendary vintage worth more than most houses. This is impossible, I whispered. These wines, they're worth millions. Keep looking, Marcus urged. There's more. At the far end of the cellar, we found another door. This one opened into a small room that made me gasp. Lining the walls were racks of wine bottles bearing Bella Vista's label, but not from recent years. These were vintages from the Vineyard's golden age, when it had produced some of California's most sought-after wines. On a small table sat a leather-bound journal and an envelope with my name. Inside was a letter in Aunt Marie's handwriting. My dearest Isabella, if you're reading this, you found what I spent 20 years protecting. The rare vintages in the outer cellar are valuable, yes, but they're not my true legacy. That lies in the bottles that surround this letter. These are Bella Vista's secret vintages, wines made exactly as my grandfather taught me, using techniques passed down through generations. While the world thought our vineyard had lost its way, I was quietly making small batches of the finest wine we've ever produced. Why the secrecy? Because true winemaking, the kind that produces something transcendent, can't be rushed or commercialized. When your uncle and cousins pushed for higher production and faster turnover, I knew they'd never understand. So I let them think the vineyard was failing while preserving our real treasure. The wider cellar's contents will give you the financial security to run Bella Vista your way. The secret vintages will prove to the world that our winemaking legacy never died. It was just waiting for the right heir. You were always that heir, Isabella. You understand that wine isn't just about business, it's about passion, patience, and respect for tradition. Now it's your turn to carry our legacy forward. All my love, Aunt Mary. P.S. Check the last vintage in the rack to your right. I think you'll find it interesting. With trembling hands, I lifted the bottle she indicated. The label read Bella Vista Private Reserve 2019, Aunt Marie's final vintage before her death. She finished it, Marcus said softly. Her last masterpiece. She knew she wouldn't live to see it released, but she made it anyway. For me, I realized. She made it for me to release when I was ready. The implications of what we found were staggering. The rare vintages alone would make headlines in the wine world. But Aunt Marie's secret wines, they would rewrite Bella Vista's story completely. My phone buzzed. Uncle Marco's number. No doubt calling to make another offer for the worthless vineyard. I let it go to voicemail, my mind already racing with plans. What are you thinking? Marcus asked, recognizing the look in my eye. The same one Aunt Marie used to get when she was plotting something extraordinary. I smiled, picking up her journal. I'm thinking it's time to show the world what Bella Vista can really do. But first, we have some work to do. The next few hours would change everything. But that's another story, one that begins with a single decision. When to reveal the truth that would transform not just my family's legacy, but the entire California wine industry. The next morning, I sat in Aunt Marie's study reviewing her private wine journals. Each page revealed another layer of her brilliant deception, how she'd maintained two parallel operations at Bella Vista for 20 years. The commercial side produced decent but unremarkable wines, while her secret cellar housed masterpieces crafted using centuries-old techniques. The soil tests came back, Marcus announced, entering with a stack of papers. Just as Marie predicted, the vines aren't depleted at all. They're perfect for producing the kind of complex wines she was making in secret. I smiled, thinking of how my family had misread everything about Bella Vista. She stressed the vines deliberately, didn't she? Forced them to work harder, develop more character. Exactly. While your uncle was complaining about low yields, Marie was creating exactly the conditions she wanted. These test results prove it. Bella Vista has some of the best terroir in California. My phone buzzed again. The 10th call from Uncle Marco since yesterday. This time I answered. Isabella, his voice oozed concern. We're worried about you, alone up there in that old house. Why don't you come down to the city? We can have dinner, discuss a fair price for the vineyard. Actually, Uncle Marco, I'm meeting with Christie's auction house this afternoon. They're very interested in some rare wines I've discovered. Silence on the line. Then, what rare wines? Oh, just a few bottles Aunt Marie left behind, including a Chateau Lafite Rothschild from 1869. Amazing what you find when you look carefully, isn't it? The phone went dead. Within an hour, a convoy of expensive cars was winding up Bella Vista's driveway. This is private property, I called out as my uncle and cousins spilled from their vehicles. You weren't invited. Private property. Uncle Marco's face was red. This is family property. If there are valuable wines here, they belong to all of us. Actually, Mr. Patterson's voice cut in as his car pulled up. Everything belongs to Isabella. I thought you might need backup, he added to me with a wink. What followed was the most satisfying hour of my life. We led them to the hidden cellar, watching their expressions change from skepticism to shock to naked greed as they realized what Aunt Marie had concealed. These wines, Anthony's voice shook. They're worth millions, I finished. And that's just the investment cellar. Would you like to see what else Aunt Marie left me? The secret room with Bella Vista's private vintages hit them even harder. Sophia actually gasped when she read the testing notes that proved these wines could rival the world's best. All this time, Uncle Marco whispered, while we thought she was failing. She was perfecting her craft, I said. Away from your constant pressure to sell out, to maximize profits at the expense of quality. She created masterpieces while you were counting dollars. We can still fix this, he rallied. As a family, we'll form a new company, market these wines properly. No, I cut him off. Aunt Marie left Bella Vista to me because she knew I'd understand what she was trying to preserve. This isn't about money, it's about legacy. You can't just shut us out. Anthony protested. We're family. Family? I laughed. Yesterday you called this place worthless. Called me incompetent. Now suddenly you want to be partners. Mr. Patterson cleared his throat. I have some additional documents you should see. Marie left very specific instructions about how these wines should be handled. The plan Aunt Marie had laid out was brilliant. The rare vintages in the investment cellar would be auctioned through Christie's, creating a multi-million-dollar endowment to support Bella Vista's true mission. Her private vintages would be released slowly, reestablishing the vineyard's reputation for excellence. More importantly, she documented everything, every technique, every secret that made her wines exceptional. Knowledge meant to be passed down, not sold to the highest bidder. The next few months transformed everything. The auction of the rare wines made international headlines. Hidden wine cellar yields million-dollar vintages. Wine critics flocked to Bella Vista when we released the first of Aunt Marie's private vintages. Extraordinary, Robert Parker wrote. A wine that challenges everything we thought we knew about California vintages, 100 points. The publicity revealed the truth about Aunt Marie's supposed decline. She hadn't failed. She'd chosen to step away from commercial success to preserve something more valuable. Each bottle we released proved that Bella Vista's legacy was stronger than ever. My family tried everything to gain control. They filed lawsuits claiming the wines were family property. They appealed to other vintners, trying to turn the industry against me. Nothing worked. Then came the day we released Aunt Marie's final vintage, the 2019 she'd made especially for me. Wine lovers and critics gathered in Bella Vista's courtyard for the first tasting. This wine, I told them, represents everything my aunt believed in. That true quality can't be rushed. That some traditions are worth preserving. That excellence speaks for itself. The response was beyond anything we'd imagined. Critics called it a masterpiece, a wine that will be talked about for decades. Orders flooded in from collectors worldwide. Uncle Marco showed up the next day, alone. I never understood her, he admitted, looking older and somehow diminished. I saw the declining sales, the lower production, and thought she was failing. I never realized she was choosing a different path. She tried to tell you, I said. All those times you pushed her to sell, to modernize, to focus on profits. She was trying to show you that some things are worth more than money. And now? What will you do with her legacy? I led him to the vineyard, where new vines were being planted using Aunt Marie's methods. I'm going to honor it, Keep Bella Vista small, focus on quality over quantity. Make wines that matter. You sound just like her, he said softly. Thank you. Bella Vista flourished over the next year, but not in the way my family had always pushed for. We produced limited quantities of exceptional wines, focusing on quality and tradition. The waiting list for our bottles grew longer with each release. Sophia eventually came to work at the Vineyard, surprised to find she had a talent for understanding wine once she stopped focusing on status and profits. Anthony opened a wine bar in San Francisco, proudly featuring Bella Vista's vintages. Last week, a young winemaker asked my advice after a tasting. Everyone says I need to expand production, focus on commercial success, she said. But I want to make wines that mean something. I showed her Aunt Marie's original wine journals, still kept in her study. Success isn't always measured in cases sold, I told her. Sometimes it's about having the courage to take a harder path, to preserve something valuable even when others don't understand. Marcus joined us, carrying a special bottle. One of the few remaining from Aunt Marie's private collection. Want to know the real secret? He asked, decanting a wine with practiced care. It's not about the wine at all. It's about understanding that some legacies are meant to be preserved, not exploited. The wine was perfect, of course. But more than that, it was a reminder of what Aunt Marie had really left me, not just valuable bottles or secret techniques, but the understanding that true worth isn't always visible on the surface. The vineyard continues to thrive, producing wines that honor both tradition and innovation. Uncle Marcos still visits occasionally, finally learning to appreciate wine for its own sake rather than its profit potential. And me? I've learned that some inheritances are about more than property or possessions. They're about preserving something precious, about having the patience to let quality speak for itself. In Aunt Marie's study, her last note to me is framed on the wall. The finest wines, like the truest legacies, reveal themselves to those who know how to wait. As I write this from the study that was once hers, overlooking vines that grow stronger each year, I think about how different things might have been if she'd given in to pressure, chosen profit over principle. The cellar's secret door remains, though it's not so secret anymore. But its lesson lives on. Sometimes the most valuable things are hidden from those too busy counting profits to understand true worth. After all, the finest vintages, like the best revenge, are best served with patience, clarity, and the quiet confidence that quality will always find its audience.